This to the House.
I call the Honourable Clayton Cosgrove.
So now we have it. After 3.5 years, they've announced some targets. Remember they had some targets 3.5 years ago when they won their first election. What were those targets? Brighter Future was the first one. Closing the gap with Oz, that's gone, that's been torpedoed, vaporised. Then they had the target, and the member before me talked about unemployment. Oh, we're going to get unemployment down. We're going to assist, in fact, the Minister of Social Welfare, Ms Bennett, we're going to assist people into jobs. Well, here's the go. Now we have 50,000 more people unemployed than there were 3.5 years ago, thanks to that target, thanks to that minister. Then, of course, they were going to reverse immigration. Remember that? Andrew Williams talked about that. That was another target 3.5 years ago. And now we have, of course, 50,000 people, 52,000 people, 1,000 people a week going to Australia. As my colleague David Parker said, nothing to do with Greece or Spain or Portugal or the GFC or the World Economic Meltdown. Oh no, they're off for the brighter future on the Gold Coast. So that was the targets, of course, that they had. 50,000 more people unemployed. And they asked us, well, what would we do? Well, in the last election, we had a really simple thing. And I note that Todd McClay never mentioned, of course, the earthquake. The earthquake is a tragedy, but the earthquake is also an opportunity. It is the world's biggest training scheme. That's what it is, the world's biggest training scheme. And we knew, the government knew almost 2 years ago now, almost 2 years ago when the first one hit, that we were going to need 20, 30, 40,000, 50,000, some people say, trade-trained individuals. And we have the other side of the equation, thanks to Paula Bennett, nearly 89,000 young people not in work, not in training, languishing on the dole queue. I think another target, of course, displaced and disregarded by the National Party. And the question for the National Party is this. The question for the National Party is this. Why is it that they can't match a large group, 89,000 young people, to a massive training opportunity in Christchurch? Because we now know that they've spent a minuscule amount on trade training. Of the trade training budget, I think it was 42 million they'd put aside. I think they've spent 7, right? So why can't they get the group of unemployed off the dole into training? Yes, it might cost some money. Yes, that's true. But the payback will be that those young people, had they been put through trade training, started it 2 years ago, would be 2/3 away through their time, productive young people swinging the hammers, turning the screwdrivers, picking up the trowel, laying the bricks, rebuilding our second largest city, and by the way, in jobs and paying tax. And you might ask, well, hang on, we've got no dough. How do we pay for that? Well, we did have a simple policy. It was take a year's dole, give it to the boss tops it up with a couple of hundred a week, the boss gets that for the first year to get that young person over the sort of hump when they're not productive, when they're actually a cost to the business, and thereafter the boss bites the wage bill and trains that person. And a guy in Christchurch called Brent Metrick, who is one of the biggest residential construction firms in Christchurch, said he had 20 gangs out there. He'd take 20 young people tomorrow. Doesn't cost a penny because it's fiscally neutral, because you either pay the young person to sit on the dole and languish, or you give it to the boss, and the deal with the boss is that they train that person as trade training. Now, I reckon that's a goer. That's a bit of innovation. That's a bit of smarts, and it's backed by the business community who desperately need them. But, what do we got over there? Nothing. They can't even convince, and they can't even use the money they allocated themselves to match 89,000 young people to 50,000 potential trade training jobs. Not a thing. So here's the prediction. What will happen when the gun goes off in Christchurch is these geniuses over there will turn the immigration tap on, because a victim doesn't care who does their house. They want their house back. You can't tell a business to wait 3 more years till the National Party get their act together and start training some people, and in will come the flow of offshore trade qualified people. In fact, they're coming now. And of course, the missed opportunity here is the taxpayer will still be paying, as they do every day, for more and more unemployed folk. And Paula Bennett's great legacy will be, to date and counting, 50,000 more people on the dole queue. And I just say, remember the target that they had. Get unemployment down, close the gap with Oz, turn the immigration tide around. Remember the cycleway. The cycleway was going to be the big king hit. And we had Chris Tremaine, the Associate Tourism Minister, in before the Select Committee last week. And we asked him, after a couple of years of sort of cycling around the cycleway, how many jobs, Minister? Didn't know. Well, I can tell him there are a couple of hundred permanent jobs in constructing the cycleway, couple of hundred, and that minister couldn't name a figure. So then what we asked him, because the target, of course, was 4,000 to 5,000 jobs out of this wonderful cycleway, couldn't tell us. The best we could find out was flicking through some statistics to work out there might be a couple of hundred people in construction. Then we said to the minister, how many businesses? Because on the 17th, I think, of July, 2009, when John Key launched this great initiative, he said there will be businesses opening up everywhere. They will be lining up down the sort of each side of the track to sell to tourists. They'll be flocking in. So we asked the Minister of Tourism, how many businesses? Well, he told the truth. He said in Napier, I think one was a fish and chip shop, but I'm not sure. There were 2 businesses that he named. One, I think, was a cycle shop, actually. He'll correct me when he gets up and takes a call. He named 2 businesses, and good on him. I will admit that's progress. But it ain't the target the National Party set for this country and in their manifesto. An Associate Minister of Tourism, who couldn't tell us after 2.5 years how many jobs there would be, how many jobs there are now. Has he reset the target? Is there going to be an evaluation? Well, there is apparently, evaluating what I don't know, and couldn't tell us how many businesses the Great Cycleway had generated. Couldn't tell us, because it ain't many. We know there's 2 in New Zealand, and to those 2 businesses in Napier, I say congratulations. What a fantastic opportunity they've got. Those 2 businesses have kicked a goal for the country, and good on them. And then, of course, we had the financial hub, and that was announced. That was going to be the king hit. That was going to be the new target, the silver bullet for the country, and it's disappeared off the face of the earth. Gone. Never mentioned now in the 120-point plan. So I say to the National Party, the best strategy that they've got, the only thing they've put up, is to rip off paper boys, kick the elderly in the guts with the asset testing, and tinker around the edges. That's all they've got, and flog off the family silver. And I say to them now, what's the target for jobs in the next 3 years? How many jobs will be created? How much growth? How many new export markets as a result of selling assets? A big, fat 0. So they've announced 10 more targets. I say, Mr. Speaker, 10 more targets. Well, announcing targets doesn't put bread on the table of people. Announcing targets doesn't pay the debt off that they're racking up at $300 million a week as a result of a tax cut where 10%, the top 10%, get 40%. So they just keep announcing targets, and you've got to know when a government's sort of out of ideas, because there's just more targets coming out. You know, a war on this, a target on that. And the best gimmick they could come up with last week was Anne Tolley standing on a car body wreck. What a genius. Sort of in her stilettos. Well, I don't own a pair of stilettos, but I'm told by Annette King it is rather difficult. No, I am sure about that. It is difficult, they say, to stand on the bonnet of a car in stilettos. And that was it. Sort of Rambo-ette-like was Anne Tolley. So the National Party's plan is to re-announce targets, a 10-point plan for the public service, tinker around the edges, no real strategy, no mention of how many growth, what is the growth target, how many export markets will be opened up, even the cliches from Todd McKay. We want to help people into employment. Great aim, we all agree with it. Where's the evidence that anything has happened? We've got 10 targets, he says, for the public service. Great, you've had 3.5 years. 3.5 years they have had to actually produce the goods, and the country has gone backwards. Absolutely backwards. So I say this crew, even Rusty in the corner over there, even old Rusty, no targets. What will she say to her people? Well, unemployment's up, the gap with Australia's open, they're 38% ahead in wages. Well, the country's gone backwards, but we've announced some more targets. Well, I say this, sir, it's going to be a big target, all right. It's going to be a big bullseye, and it's going to go on the back of every member over there, and the people of New Zealand will take aim. They'll take aim in 2014, and by God, sir, they'll hit the bullseye.
Point of order. The Honourable Minister.